Hey guys, what's going on? Just saw Justice League. I'm excited and I want to talk about it, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the in the middle for Justice League for me. And just a heads up, there will be spoilers. So I like to say that I'm unbiased on this, but to be completely honest, I'm pretty biased. I'm a really big DC guy. I'm not super into a lot of Marvel characters. There's a few like Spider-Man and people like that. Most of the Spider family for the most part. But other than that, I'm not really into too many Marvel characters. I've always just been more inclined to just read more about the DC characters and, of course, be involved in the DCEU. So keep that in mind as we're doing this video. So I guess we'll start with the good stuff. So one of the things I thought was really good in this movie was that Batman didn't overtake all of the characters in the Justice League. So I think it's quite obvious that Batman is obviously one of the popular DC characters. I would even go on the line and say that he is the definitive DC character. Some people say Superman, but to be honest, it's probably Batman. And I thought it was really, really cool that Batman didn't take over the entire movie, because Batman seem to do that a lot, especially with the animated movies where Batman just takes over everything. He just suffocates it. And I'm a huge Batman fan. Don't get me wrong, I love Batman. But sometimes it feels like the movie just becomes the Batman movie and not so much the rest of them. So I was very happy with Justice League and how they portrayed everybody else and how Batman didn't just suffocate the rest of the characters. Speaking of the rest of the characters, the Flash was crazy good. He was a very lovable character. The Flash is my favorite DC superhero, and I think this set up great for his kind of solo movie. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen. I have no idea when they're going to come out with that, but I think it's set up to perform very well. It seemed like a lot of people leaving the theater today really enjoyed the Flash character. And personally, I think that Flash is kind of a sleeper character for DC, especially for a company that banks on Batman like 100% of the time. I think that they really have something here with the Flash. Now, we had a couple after credit scenes, and Deathstroke was in one of them, and oh my God, I about died. I about died. I knew who it was the second it happened. The second I saw the ribbon, it wasn't even the blade that I saw. It was the ribbon. I saw the ribbon and I was like, oh man, that's it. That's it. I already know who it is. I jumped down my seat immediately. I paid attention so hard, man. It was incredible. I loved it. You know, we've heard about Deathstroke being in the new Batman movie, but I really haven't heard anything too much about it after that. And I did not expect him to be in the after credit scene, so that was incredible. Something else that I really didn't expect was the Green Lanterns were shown in one scene. I thought we were just going to completely we were going to act like they don't even exist. The Green Lanterns are not here. We have never heard of a Green Lantern. That is not a thing. But in the flashback scene with the war with Steppenwolf before and the whole Unity, it showed the Green Lanterns, and of course the Green Lantern got his ass kicked and then the ring flew off, but that's a whole other thing. But I hope that it leads to something better than what we got with the whole Ryan Reynolds movie. If we're going to do something with the Green Lantern, fantastic. But please, just not the Ryan Reynolds movie. I really like that Batman used more bat tech than usual. You know, it seems like most of the time Batman is very grounded in the Batman movies that we get, at least the live action Batman movies. He's a very grounded character. He's not doing too much crazy stuff. He's not using too much crazy tech. Most of it's on the utility belt. But it's nice to see that they're using Batman a little different here, bringing out the big guns like the Nightcrawler. I mean, Batman really can't do too much against a horde of parademons, so it's nice to see him kind of get the Batmobile and get the Nightcrawler, and it was just nice to see that we've got a Batman that's not afraid to use his bigger tech, and I really hope we see more of that. And something I think I want to see a little more of is Cyborg. I thought he fit very well into this movie, weirdly enough. And I say weirdly enough because, to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of Cyborg in his current role in the league. But it came across good on the big screen. I mean, I thought that Cyborg going into this was just going to be one of those background characters that no one's really going to get into too much. And while he didn't have too many crazy things going on, he was a character that you can see that you could probably latch onto. And I thought that was, it came across good on the big screen. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of his role in the league, but I thought it worked good for the group that they're working with right now. I don't think I really need to cover too much of the fight scenes because, I mean, honestly, DC movies have never had an issue with the fight scenes, and this movie was no different. I think they knocked all of the fight scenes out of the park. Every one of them was just fantastic. I wasn't too sure how I would feel about the portrayal of Aquaman, but I thought it was actually pretty good. I don't think if they would have presented Aquaman the way that he used to be presented in the comics that he would have really gotten a lot of reception. I think they had to really modernize the character, and I think with Jason Momoa, I think they did a good job with it. It's not exactly the Aquaman that most of us know, but I think it's an Aquaman that will really set the tone for the character going forwards. You know, it was getting to the end of the movie, and I was thinking the whole time, I was like, this movie is missing something, and I cannot put my finger on it. And the second that Cyborg said, Booyah! I said, there it is. There it is. There it is. I was so happy that they ended up putting the booyah in there, man. It really just, it made my entire night. So now let's talk about stuff that I was in the middle on Justice League. So we talked about how the Flash was this lovable character, right? Well, I thought that the Flash was less Barry Allen and more Wally West. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to start a war here, but I will say that Wally West is a little more fun than Barry Allen. And Wally West was definitely the representation in this movie. I felt it the entire way through. I love the character in this movie, don't get me wrong. It's just something that stuck out to me. It's like, this guy's name is Barry Allen. We're doing the Barry Allen story, but he kind of feels like Wally West. That's not a bad thing. You know, they can mix the characters all they want, but it's just something I noticed. Something I also noticed was that a lot of reviewers were talking about how the characters didn't really have time to develop. Now, let's talk about that. So we have Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. These are three characters that have already been developed in past movies, so we really don't need to cover those. The ones that we need to cover are Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman. Here's the thing with character development for these guys, though. As it was presented in the movie, as they presented to us, Cyborg, Aquaman, and Flash are just now kind of getting themselves together. They don't really know what they can do with their powers. They don't really know where they stand or why they're doing things. They're just kind of doing things. I mean, Flash didn't even get his job at the CCPD until the, end of the movie. So, I mean, I can kind of understand Cyborg and Aquaman, because Aquaman was kind of like, they didn't do too very much with him. You know, they showed Mera, they showed her, and I thought there were going to be more scenes because I had seen photos, but they didn't really dive too much into Aquaman. So I can understand that, and I can understand Cyborg, but, you know, between Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Flash, I felt like they kind of went over what they needed to go over. I mean, Cyborg's story is pretty straightforward, and they even went into Cyborg, you know, being part of the Mother Box and being transformed from the Mother Box, and then having him, you know, kind of break the Mother Boxes apart so Superman, you know, it was a whole thing there, and I felt like that really added to Cyborg too. The only character that I felt like they could have done more with, and maybe if they had more time, would be Aquaman. So that was just something that I thought was a little weird, that I kept seeing stuff about character development when I walked away from the movie and really only felt like one character could have gotten more time. Now, for the big bad in this movie, Steppenwolf, he's an interesting one. I saw a lot of people saying that they felt he was underpowered in this movie, but for the most part, he pretty much beat up everybody except for Superman. And honestly, that makes sense, because Darkseid's going to be the one that's going to, you know, battle Superman for the most part. They're all going to have to come together to beat Darkseid, and Steppenwolf is not Darkseid. I mean, maybe because I'm a wrestling fan, I read into this more because, you know, I have to pay attention to all this kind of stuff when I'm watching wrestling, but he beat up everybody. I mean, honestly, he beat up everybody. They all tried to get him at one time and they couldn't even beat him, but it took Superman to beat him. So obviously Superman is stronger than Steppenwolf, and then everyone else came in at the end and they beat him, and that leads you to Darkseid, who is the big final boss guy, who is obviously going to be the one Superman's going to have to need help, because he's not going to be able to defeat him. You know, you have the bad guy set up the good guy to set up a bigger bad guy for the good guy to overcome. You know, it's just kind of like something like that. And honestly, I had no problem with Steppenwolf in this movie, other than some dodgy CGI at some points, which was an issue throughout most of the movie. But other than that, really not an issue with me. Now, let's talk about some of the bad stuff in Justice League. The movie was only 2 hours long. I thought it was going to be way longer than that, especially with a bunch of new characters. I thought that even if it were 2 hours and 30 minutes long, that they could have fleshed out Aquaman's character a little more, and it would have been presented 100 times better. I think the movie was too short. I feel like 2 hours was just a bad time for the first Justice League movie. I think if they went 2 hours 30, they definitely could have snuck in a little more Aquaman. And I think a lot of the people saying that there was no character development, maybe it would have helped them out. The downtime in the DC movies is also probably more missed than hit. Marvel, I think, is very good at building up to the climax. I think that they're really, I think that's like Marvel's best thing, is like the characters can literally be doing nothing and you are still entertained. I always feel like at the end of the Marvel movies, though, I feel like the climax isn't the greatest, while DC, on the other hand, is like the complete opposite. I feel like sometimes their downtime is like, you're like, okay, all right, when are we going to get to the big crazy action part? You know, I think like that's where the Marvel and the DC movies kind of switch around a little bit. And I don't know, I just felt like the downtime in this movie was a little like, okay, let's get to the big fight. The Flash's running form in this movie was god awful. That man was out here like LeVar Ball, man. It was bad. I I hope that maybe in the next movie he learns running form, you know, like actual running form, because God, it was like almost, you thought maybe like he was just joshing around at some points, but then he's racing Superman at the end and he's just still flopping his arms all around and you're just like, okay. Speaking of the CGI from earlier, Superman's mouth CGI was fucking terrible. Apparently he couldn't shave his mustache because of a contract in another movie he's doing right now. So they decided that, yeah, you know what? We're going to zoom in on his mouth the entire time. I believe in justice. Like, come on now. Come on now. Y'all knew that that didn't look good. There's no way y'all did a final look through on that movie and say, yep, that's good. I think the biggest thing I can take away from this is that I left the theater happy. I left the theater smiling, you know, especially after the after credit scene. I was wilding out. Like, that's the biggest thing, is walking out of the theater and just being happy about what you just watched. And that's what Justice League was for me. You know, it wasn't perfect at all. There's a lot of issues, especially, you know, I believe in justice. But I walked out of the movie very happy with everything that was presented to me. So what did you guys think of the movie? You guys can tell me down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, if you enjoyed, leave that thumbs up. Subscribe if you guys are not subscribed for more of that goody. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya.